Hello, I'm Kathy Fox Alfano, host of Born TV's Election 22, Why Should We Vote for You? Today, I'm welcoming Jay McMahon, Republican candidate for Attorney General. Jay, thank you so much for coming all the way across the bridge to our studio here in Bourne.
Across the great expanse,
Yes.
the Cape Cod Canal.
Yes, Jay lives here in Bourne. Jay, we would really like to get to know you better.
Okay.
First, Jay, tell us, what does the Attorney General do?
The Attorney General is the top elected law enforcement official in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The Attorney General has 500 lawyers in the office, amongst other paralegals, certain staff people, and certain secretaries and of such. So it is a huge law firm, and I hope to be the head of that law firm. The Attorney General is a constitutional office, and so law enforcement resides with the Attorney General. The Attorney General sets law enforcement policy. It could conduct investigations, could preempt any criminal investigation happening anywhere at any stage in the Commonwealth, or obviously on the state side. The Attorney General sometimes launches investigations through task forces, undercover, whenever there's something that's affecting the state as a whole, as opposed to individual counties. If there's a law enforcement agency needed or action in a particular county, many times the district attorney will handle that. So the district attorney handles the bulk of the local criminal actions, but the Attorney General takes care of anything with respect to the state.
Tell us what experiences that you have that would make you a great Attorney General.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've been an attorney for 35 years. Here in Bourne, I have been here in Bourne. In 1971, I graduated out of this building, the Bourne High School, and all my brothers and sisters did. I grew up in Buzzards Bay, and so I've got 35 years of legal experience. I've had thousands of cases, all different kinds, criminal cases, civil cases, probate cases, all that stuff. Everything you could think of that the average person goes to court on, I've been in those courts. I've been at every level of court. I've been from the local trial court level or the Superior Court to the appellate court, and also to the Supreme Judicial Court. That's on the state side. And on the federal side, I've been in all levels of court in Massachusetts on the federal side as well. I've been before state, federal, and municipal boards and commissions. So I have the deep experience and an understanding and a grasp of all the issues that the Attorney General's office would handle. I've been in all the courts where they handle and everything else that they do. So, and I've got the trial experience behind me to be to at least on the legal end. But that's the specialty end of the department. The other things I also have is I have managerial experience in large corporations. When I was a younger person, couple of years out of high school, I worked in the commercial lending department of Cape Cod Bank and Trust, which used to be or took over the old Buzzards Bay National Bank here in town. So I worked in management there for several years, and then from there I went to Cape Cod Hospital, where I was the payroll manager. I did that for several years, and we had over 2,000 employees there. Wow. So I worked in management there, and also Scudder Taylor Oil Company. I ran their office, and they were the largest home heating oil company in southeastern Massachusetts. So I have plenty of corporate business experience in running large organizations. I was also in the military. Right out of high school, I joined the Army National Guard. Shortly thereafter, some of the officers in the National Guard encouraged me to go to the state OC, that's the Officers Candidate School. Okay. And this, in Massachusetts, it's called the Massachusetts Military Academy. I went there and graduated from there and became a second lieutenant in the military police. And while I was in the academy, we learned and were taught to command organizations to the size of battalions. A battalion is about a little over 1,000 people. So I've had all that experience needed, and I believe I am the most qualified candidate for that job.
Okay. We have a fairly well-known Attorney General now. How would you handle the office differently?
Well, a couple of things. Although she has a lot of name recognition, a lot of it's not good, and it's not for good reason. There was some huge levels of corruption in the Attorney General's office. Now, I'm not just saying that like off the cuff because I'm running for the office. I'm saying it because I read that in official court documents. There was an investigation in the Attorney General's office in 2016 by a Superior Court Judge, Richard Carey, out of Hampden County, which is Springfield, Massachusetts. And the issue had to do with the drug scandals in the drug laboratories in Massachusetts. We have two labs. We have one in Boston and we have one in Amherst. And you might remember in Boston, they had trouble with a chemist named Annie Dukin.
Yes.
Okay, so Annie Dukin was able to analyze 4 times as much contraband as the next experienced chemist. And people were wondering, why was she so efficient? Well, because she just took the police, she took their word for it. In other words, she did not go through the analyst. She just signed certificates. And if somebody said it was cocaine, she just said it was cocaine. And so there was a real problem with evidence being used in court.
Right.
In the western part of the state, we had Sonia Farak. Now, Sonia Farak was a chemist there. She was a little bit different. When the contraband would come in from the police departments to be tested, she would test it. She'd put her fingers in it and go, that's pretty good stuff.
Oh, no.
And she would take out the substance and take it home, and she would replace the substance with stuff like laundry detergent or starch and stuff. Well, the problem is the Attorney General's office knew that this was going on. And when they finally investigated and shut it down, they said, well, it's only a few cases, a couple of dozen cases, and we're willing to dismiss those cases. But when they were pressed for information, it didn't affect just a couple of dozen cases. It affected 10,000 cases. In the final analysis, it affected 30,000 cases. People who were in jail for drug-related offenses, and all of a sudden, the Supreme Judicial Court said, set them free. We're going to dismiss all those cases. And you can imagine the surprise on an inmate who knows they're serving 5 years for drug trafficking, and all of a sudden the correctional officer comes in, opens his cell door and says, grab your stuff and get out of here. You're done. The guy says, hey, I haven't even reached parole yet. Forget it. You're done. You're out of here. Take your stuff and go. 30,000 people. So I want to tell your viewers to, if they want to get more information on that, because it's long and involved, Netflix has something called, a documentary called How to Fix a Drug Scandal. Okay. And if they go there and see how to fix a drug scandal, they will see the steep corruption in Massachusetts, in particular, the Attorney General's office. I want to clean all that up.
Okay. Now, I know tragically you have been personally affected by the opioid crisis.
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that.
Well, I'll tell you what. So my son Joel, he joined the United States Army. He wanted to make the military his career, and he was proud of it. And he was involved in Iraqi freedom. And while he was one of the first troops to enter Baghdad, and they would allow them to go to use satellite phones and contact their family members every couple of days. And so they couldn't tell their name, they couldn't tell the unit that they were in, and they couldn't tell their location, but they could talk.
Okay.
And after each conversation with Joel, I tell him, listen, keep your head down, kid. You're a little, sometimes you're a little too aggressive. He goes, don't worry, Dad, I got it. I said, I know. So they're in Baghdad, and they're under enemy attack. He gets wounded, but he doesn't get wounded by enemy fire, but he gets wounded in the midst of the combat. And so the doctors operate on him. He's able to walk after the operation, but when it came time to re-enlist, they told him, son, your physical condition doesn't render you ability. So what they wound up doing was they discharged him to the VA, and the VA said, we know how to handle that. Here's a 30-day supply of OxyContin. See you in 30 days.
Oh.
That kept going for a little while. They realized they were making these Army veterans all opiate addicts, and they tried to dial it back they thought they were weaning them off. Everybody, if you're an opiate addict, you don't wean off unless it's under controlled circumstances. And so one day I got terrible news, and that's how that went down.
So sorry.
Well, thank you.
Now, I imagine you want to stop the flow of opioids into Massachusetts and help those who are already addicted.
Absolutely, and I do have a plan to do that.
Good.
When you look at what's happening now, 6 years ago, we had statistics that said 500 people a year were dying of opioid overdoses. Now it's 4,500 as of last year, each year.
In the country, or?
Massachusetts alone.
Wow.
And if you go to Boston, you see methadone mile, which is longer than a mile now. They changed the name to Mass and Cass because methadone mile, but what it really is, if you look at the poor souls that are there, you see, to me, that's the government raising the white flag saying, we surrendered to the opioid crisis, we can't do anything about it. But Kathy, honestly, the dirty little secret in Massachusetts is the medical capital of the world. We actually do know how to cure opiate addiction, but it's private pay programs.
Okay.
The private pay programs are 85% successful, first time through.
Okay.
If you relapse, you come through the second time, you get cured.
Okay.
The public programs, the government-sponsored programs, they're a 99% failure.
Oh, wow.
I know people who've gone through them more than 25 times.
Oh, wow.
So what I want to do is investigate those programs, and why are they holding themselves out as a rehabilitative program if they've got statistics, and I'm sure they do, because I've got them, that they're a failure. They either have to step up and equal the private pays, or we're going to force them to give back all the money that the government's been paying them, and somehow find a place for these people in the real programs so we can give them their lives back. And that's the number one main plan I want to do.
Do we have enough of those private pay places? I would imagine not.
Okay, you're right about we don't have them yet, but what we can do, and I have heard, I have met with many rehabilitative, opiate rehabilitative physicians, great people, willing to help. A lot of them who have since, I met them 4 years ago, have since retired, would donate their time. They would love to see a program that we can give people their lives back instead of forever having them on methadone or Suboxone or Vivitrol. So that's one phase. The other phase is prosecution, to go after these people and dry up these drugs on the streets with tough prosecution.
Okay.
Because we want to make Massachusetts a place that they don't want to come to because it's too dangerous for them to ply their trade here. Let them go to another state where there's more lenient laws. But in Massachusetts, we're going to be harsh to drug trafficking thugs that are on our streets.
Where are the opioids coming from, do you think?
We know where they're coming from. They're coming from the southern border of the United States. They're coming over the border. in places that there's no, there's either little security or lack security. Places where they could just come on over and into the country and then disappear and then go throughout certain areas of the country. In particular, the ones that are coming here to Massachusetts.
Okay. Here in Bourne, we have two very concerning environmental issues. Well, we have more than two, but these are two I'm going to ask you about. We're looking at both Holtec, which is wanting to dump radioactive waste into the Cape Cod Bay, and then we have a potential wastewater outfall into the Cape Cod Canal, very near homes and beaches. What can you do to help stop these potentially environmental disasters?
I got to tell you something. When I heard of those two, both of them, the plans that they were thinking, I'm saying, what person in their right mind living in Bourne is going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and dump this into the Cape Cod Canal?
Right.
No one in their mind would do that.
Right.
So I attended and got a lot of my family and friends attended the town meeting that was right here in this building, and we all rallied against it. And I'll tell you what, with a resounding no, if anybody still thinks that that's a good idea, they're going to be in trouble. But I'll tell you what, I'll be watching that. The good thing about the Cape Cod Canal is that it's federal, so the EPA will be involved in that, and all they need is a referral along with the environmental protection of the state government, and we're going to stop that. Because can I tell you something?
Please.
No one, of all the things, there's always a pro and a con on different sides. But this is the most ridiculous plan to ever hit the planet.
I agree.
And it's not. And I'll tell you what, I'm from Bourne, and there's no way I'm going to allow that happening here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. How about Holtec with dumping radioactive waste into the Cape Cod Bay? It's all money. You do know that.
I do know that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you something. Their original plan, they never told anybody about that in the original plan, because why? Everybody would have blocked their purchase of that facility. So clearly, this is sort of a bait and switch, and this is what we're going to do. We're not going to let them do it.
Good.
Plymouth's not going to let them do it. Bourne's not going to let them do it. But you'll have somebody, a friend in the Attorney General's office, who also is not going to let them do that.
Great, great. Where do you stand on the potential gun range up at the Joint Base?
Okay, so this is an interesting, I'm glad you asked me that question. When I was a lieutenant in the military police, we trained out there. A lot of people don't know that Otis Air Force Base, or right now Joint Base Cape Cod, was actually 5 groups or 5 installations.
Right.
Originally, it was Camp Edwards. It was an Army base.
Right.
I have an uncle who served out there between World War II and the Korean War as an MP. He told me a lot about that. When I was an MP in the 70s, we trained out there. We were the police force out there, and we loved it. But when I was there, it was almost like a little city, because Otis Air Force Base was also there. Otis Air Force Base started out as an Army Air Corps base. Then it became, the Army Air Corps became the Air Force. And Otis became the second largest SAC, that Strategic Air Command base, in the world.
Right.
And it was great. I used to go out there as a kid. And like I said, it was also the Army trained out there. They had 22 ranges. Our job was to patrol the ranges, patrol the people that were going back and forth on the roads, making sure they were driving safely. We did a lot of transportation of ammunition to those ranges. And of course, then you got Air Station Cape Cod. There was a naval installation out there back in the 70s. Obviously, no ships, because it's not on the water. But they did have some administrative people out there, and there was a there was a Marine battalion out there.
Yes, but how about the gun range?
The gun range. Okay, so there's been gun ranges out there since the early 1900s, because that's when Camp Edwards first started. And then in the 80s, they started reducing the number of gun ranges, and they started changing the type of ammunition that they had. But there's always been gun ranges out there. To me, it's still a military base. And military people are going to do what they do for training. I remember when it was artillery, and we used to hear it all weekend long, the booming of artillery. We don't have that anymore. A machine gun range is nothing more than one range compared to the 22 ranges they used to have out there. From the environmental studies that I have seen, they have worked it out with a different type of ammunition that they're going to use in a sifting process to recover the ammunition as it hits in these berms and burrows that they've made there. So that's basically what they're shooting into. A lot of people have a misconception about that you're just shooting into the woods, could hit animals and all that stuff. It's not. And it's existing range areas. It's not like they're tearing down trees and everything to create a new range. So I don't have an issue with it.
Okay.
No one's approached me on it.
I understand that they're clear cutting 170 acres to make this.
It's possible,
Yeah.
but it is a military base.
Right, right. Okay. The Cape has an increasing number of seniors retiring here. How can you protect seniors from scammers and unscrupulous predators that feast on our unsuspecting seniors?
Boy, I'll tell you what, you are absolutely correct. A day doesn't go by I don't read it in the newspapers and I see it. And I'm a little perturbed that the current Attorney General is not taking more action in that. Okay. Now, I'll tell you what the plan is. What they have now is some departments and the state police, they have small units of people who, well, they call them the Geek Squad. And basically what they do is they can, when it comes to identity theft and all that stuff, they can trace that stuff down. I want to greatly enhance that because my heart really goes out to the elderly and people on fixed income. And like somebody reminded me one time 20 years ago, the elderly are the future of every one of us. Right. And so, but what troubles me even more, not only on the scamming that they're doing, but I've heard, I mean, and we all know just recently, the price of electricity has doubled and home heating oil is going to double this winter, so that our elderly and the people that we have on fixed income, they have a grim decision that they got to make. Eat or heat, but you can't do both. Yeah. And we got to do something about that. Now, the Attorney General does have the seat at the table to the utilities when it comes to rate hikes and that sort of thing, but I don't see any pushback coming from the President Attorney General. Folks, you'll get a pushback when I'm your Attorney General. I will be pushing back at them and making them prove every penny that they have, that they are saying they need to extract from fixed income people.
Okay. What other plans do you have specifically to help us here on the Cape, especially here in your hometown? Well,
I'll tell you what. Our hometown here, we have been pretty fortunate to escape most disasters that have happened in other places of the state. For instance, in Westfield, they have no drinking water from that town. They have to import it from other communities. There's a lot of other lot of issues that other towns have that in this particular town, we've been fortunate. We've been fortunate to have good government leaders and municipal leaders. And I've enjoyed when I've gone to the meetings and see how they're conducted and the concern that there is for the citizens of Bourne. However, the rest of the Cape doesn't fare quite as well. There is a huge drug problem in Central Cape Cod. Once you get past Sandwich, we've got some serious issues through the Hyannis area, through the Yarmouth area, further down Cape Dennis, and then all the way to the end in Provincetown. We've got some drug issues that are not being dealt with by adequately or sufficiently by law enforcement. I will deal with that.
Okay. Can the AG's office work on health care? And what is your position for health care for all?
Okay. So obviously, I believe that any American really wants all Americans, disadvantaged Americans, to have health care. I know a lot of people, and some of my family members have been on Mass Health. I know how that works. I have represented people who, for instance, have gotten in car accidents, and sometimes from the recovery, you got to pay that back. So it's not like it's free, but you got to pay it back, but it's taxpayer funded. And I think people who are impoverished or in a disadvantage as far as their incomes go, that they should have adequate health care. The big debate is not that they shouldn't have health care, it's how is it going to get paid?
Right.
And that's the main issue. So I would be watching that. One of the things that the AG's office does have is a division that watches over insurance. And we have a seat at the table when it comes to how insurances are being paid and how they are covering certain issues of health and pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Those are the things I'm going to be working hard for to make sure that all Americans in the Commonwealth are covered.
All right. And finally, Jay, tell us, why should we vote for you?
Okay. I am the law enforcement candidate. You want to elect me. Let me give you some contact information. You want to look at my website. It's www.attorney, you got to spell it out, ATTORNEY, J-A-Y, McMahon, MCMAHON.com, or you can go to my Facebook page. It's at Attorney Jay McMahon. I'm the law and order candidate. My number one issue is your public safety. Now you might say, well, shouldn't that be every candidate for this office? Well, not so. My opponent wants to defund the police. Right now, Massachusetts and many of our communities are experiencing crime waves of epic proportions. There's fentanyl killing our youth. There's heroin still out there and cocaine flooding our streets. We know they're coming. It's coming across from the southern border into our communities. No community leader in any minority community that I have talked to wants to defund the police. And yet somehow my opponent thinks by defunding the police, we're going to stop the crime waves here in Massachusetts. I say that's not going to happen, and I just can't see an average person thinking about solving crime by defunding the police. Actually, to me, the police are our heroes. I do back the blue. I don't want to punish the police for any reason in Massachusetts because I don't think it needs to be. So for me, qualified immunity for police officers, they've had it since the beginning of time. They should continue to have it. I won't defund the police. I will enhance the police, work with them, make your community safe. You will see a big difference in Massachusetts within my first year in office. And I ask you to vote for me, Jay McMahon, as your next Attorney General.
Well, thank you so much, Jay, and best of luck in the upcoming election on or before November 8th. You've been watching this on Born TV. Please watch this and my other interviews on borntv.com. Watch, meet all the candidates, and then you be the judge. Get out and vote. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.